Hey guys, how's it going? I hope everybody's doing well out there today. On this channel, we've spent a fair amount of time talking about things like Pi-Hole and AdGuard Home and other ways to protect yourself online. In this video, though, I want to show how to add DNSSEC to your Pi-Hole or AdGuard setup by installing and configuring a stubby container. Now, stubby is an application that acts as a local DNS privacy stub resolving using DNS over TLS. Now, Stubby encrypts DNS queries sent from a client machine, like a desktop or a laptop or anything on your network really, to a DNS privacy resolver, increasing end user privacy. Now, just for some clarification, a stub resolver converts name resolution requests from applications like web browsers into DNS request messages. So I just wanted to throw some of that in there for a bit of extra clarification about some of the terms that we're going to be using. Now, for our DNS privacy resolver, we're going to be using a third-party DNSSEC provider called NextDNS. But there are other options out there that will accomplish the same goal. We're just going to use this one as an example. Now, before I go any farther, I want to talk to you about how you can add more security and protection to other parts of your life with today's video sponsor, Aura.
We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended warranty.
In 2020, more than 49 million people around the world were victims of identity theft, with an estimated cost of more than $56 billion. And approximately 77% of that was from direct interaction scams like phishing emails and spam calls. That same year, more than 2.2 million fraud cases were filed with the FTC, and that means an identity in the United States was stolen every 14 seconds. Do not be one of those victims. Aura protects your identity by monitoring your credit, your bank account, your social security number, and other personal information for suspicious activity, and provides protections if your identity is stolen. These bits of data are often found on the dark web, and they even scan the dark recesses of the internet to help prevent your data from being bought and sold. They have a suite of tools to keep you and your family safe, whether you're on a Mac, PC, Android, or iOS. And these tools include a VPN, antivirus protection, password management, and even spam call and text protection. Now, I think one of my favorite things is when I log into my account and see that they've been proactively removing my information from a bunch of different data brokers. Whether you want to protect yourself and your immediate family, or you want to give the gift of Aura's protection, be sure to check out the link in the video description to find out how you can protect yourself from being another fraud statistic. So if you're not interested in using a third-party provider, then this video may not be for you. But hopefully you'll check out some of my other content instead of this video. Now, with that said, in order to follow this tutorial, you will need an account at nextdns.io. You can use the free tier for testing, or if you're getting fewer than 300,000 DNS requests per month. And if you'd like to get their pro plan for $1.99 a month or 19 bucks a year, there is an affiliate link in the video description that you can check out. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump over to my desktop and start getting things set up. Okay, so here we are. We're on my desktop. We can see that I'm logged into Proxmox, though you don't have to do that. That's just how I like to do things when I'm doing these videos. And most of my stuff in my server back there for production is all done in Proxmox. It's just my comfort zone. This is a Debian 11 container, and this is where we're going to do our work. However, whatever we're going to do in this video will translate to basically anything else. This is just what we're going to do it in for the sake of this tutorial. Now, originally my plan was to come in here and just start deploying the files that we need to get our system set up and running, but I thought that there's a pretty good chance that you may run into some DNS issues if this is your first time dealing with Pi-Hole or AdGuard or whatever the case is. So before we do any of that stuff, I want to actually go in and make sure that our DNS isn't going to cause an issue with our AdGuard or our Pi-Hole setups here. So let's go back to my desktop. And the first thing that I want to do is I actually want to change directories into etc/systemd. And then once I'm in here, if we do an ls, we can see that what we're going to be looking for is this resolved.conf file right here. So I'm going to do nano, resolved.conf. And then basically there's only one thing in here we need to change, and we're going to scroll down to where it says DNS stub listener equals yes. We want to change this. We want to remove the little hash mark there in the front and set this to no. Basically what this is going to do is make sure that our system isn't trying to force a DNS service. We need that port for what we're going to do here. So once we have edited this file, we can save and exit like I did. So I did Control O and Enter and Control X to exit, and then I'll clear my screen. So the next thing that we want to do is actually restart the systemd resolved service. So what we're going to do is just run this command, which is sudo as root. You don't need to run this. So if you're running it as root, don't worry about the sudo command right here at the beginning. However, you may need it if you're not logged in as root. We're just going to say, hey, restart this service. So we're going to hit enter. And now we're good to go. That's all we had to do in order to fix the DNS issues to prevent them from being issues later on. So the next thing we want to do is actually do a cd and then a slash just to go back to our home directory. That's where we're going to do all of the stuff that we're going to do for this video. Basically, I'm just going to create a couple of files here. You can put these files wherever, but again, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to do this in the home directory. Now, the first file that we need to create is a file called stubby.yml. So we're going to do nano stubby.yml like so. And then we're going to go ahead and paste in all of this nonsense. Now, basically, you don't need to change anything in this file except for these last several lines right here. So in order to get the information that you're going to need for where it says round robin upstreams equals 1, and then all of these upstream recursive servers and all of this information can actually be found in your next DNS account. So we're going to go over here, and what we want to do is make sure that we're on the setup tab, which we can see right here. And then if we scroll down to the setup guide right here, and then click on Linux. And we can scroll down a bit farther here until we find this stubby section right here. So we can just highlight this like so, click copy, come back over to here, and then we're just going to go ahead and make sure all of that's gone. We're going to paste it in just so we make sure that we've got the correct information based on our account. Now, what I'm showing here is just an account that I set up for the sake of this tutorial. Your information will look different. If you use the information that I'm showing in this tutorial, it's fine. It's just I'm not going to keep this account. So if you try to use my credits or whatever, it's probably not going to work for you for very long. So you can just go up and sign up for your own account and get the information the same way I just showed. So once we have this, we can go ahead and again, save and exit. So Control O and enter and Control X, again for nano anyway. So because we've already done videos on this channel about Pi-Hole and about AdGuard Home, we're not gonna get into too many of the intricacies of setting up either of those services. We're gonna go ahead and look through the Docker Compose files that I've got set up here. But we're not going to get too much into the weeds as far as what does what. We're just going to kind of go through it, and we'll talk about just kind of the basics of what's going on here. And we'll talk about the different services that we're going to deploy, the networking and that sort of thing. So in order for our AdGuard and our Pi-Hole, whichever we want to use, in order for those to most easily communicate with Stubby, we need to create a Docker network. So to do that, what we're going to do, so it's going to be Docker network create Pi-Hole _ local _ network. You can name this network whatever you want to name it. Just make sure that you make note of it, and I'll show you why here in a minute. And then we've got a subnet of 172.25.00/24. That's it. That's all we're going to do to create our network. I'm going to hit enter. And now we've created our network. So let's make sure that it actually stored the name appropriately. Sometimes Docker does weird things when we create different volumes and networks and things like that. So we're going to do Docker network ls and hit enter. And there it is. So right here, we've got our Pi-Hole local network. Sometimes it'll add like home, or it'll add root, or it'll add something to it that isn't the name that we gave it. So I just wanted to make sure that it actually gave it the appropriate name for when we go to deploy our Docker Compose file. So speaking of our Docker Compose, now that we've got our network created, we've fixed our DNS, and we've got our stubby.yml file created, now we can actually take a look at the Docker Compose that we're going to use for our Pi-Hole setup. We'll take a look at the AdGuard as well, but this is just going to be for the Pi-Hole section or portion of things here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and clear my screen, and I'm going to say nano docker compose.yml, and then I'm going to do version 3. Oops, I don't know why that wasn't in there, but we're going to go ahead and just paste that in. Now, basically what we've got our version 3 here. We've got services. Our first service is going to be Pi-Hole. The container name is Pi-Hole, and our image, believe it or not, is Pi-Hole. Below that, we've got some ports. 53 is going to be for our DNS stuff, both TCP and UDP. We've also got port 67, which honestly, I can't remember off the top of my head what that's for. But our next set of ports here is for our dashboard. Now, don't change any of these lines up here. Leave those alone. However, if you've already got something on port 8082, you can change this part right here. Don't change anything with the colon or anything after that. Leave that alone. Next, we've got a couple of environment variables. The first one is a time zone. So let's go back up to our time zone and set this to wherever your time zone is. I'm going to say America/Denver. And then my password. This is going to be the password to log into the Pi-Hole dashboard. And I'm just going to call it password. Again, this is just a demonstration. I've already got this set up on my network, and I'm not worried about this particular instance. Next, we've got some volumes. Basically, you can just leave this alone. It should do everything that it needs to do with everything configured this way. Next, we've got a restart policy of unless stopped. So if your server reboots, something crashes, whatever, these containers will automatically come back up with the restart policy of unless stopped. And then next, we've got we're declaring a network. We're going to attach both of these containers to the network that we created a moment ago. And so basically, we've got our Pi-Hole local network, and then we've got an IP address in the subnet that we declared earlier when we created that Docker network. So this is just saying, hey, give it this IP address on the network that we already created. That's all we're doing there. Next, we've got our stubby container. This is our kind of our DNS intermediary. And so we're going to use Carter Field's stubby. We've got a restart policy of unless stopped. Our volume is going to be wherever we put that stubby.yml file. Again, for me, it was at home/stubby.yml. If you put that file somewhere else, definitely change this section right here. Again, nothing, the colon or anything after it. Just leave that part alone. Again, we've got our network. We're declaring that same network as before, and this time we're giving it an IP address, but 11 instead of 10 like we did in the previous container. And then anytime we do this kind of stuff, we have to declare the networks down below, and we want to make sure that we set this to external equals true because we already created the network before we got into this step. So once we're happy with all of this, we can do Control-O and Enter and Control-X, and then clear our screen and then do Docker compose up-D. Now, if you run this command the way I've got it shown here and it doesn't work, you may have to go back and do Docker -compose -up-D like it shows there. It just depends on which version of Docker Compose you have installed on your system. Also, the -D right here at the end is just making sure that we can close our terminal window and not affect whether or not these containers will stay up. If we don't have the -D and we close our terminal window, the containers will shut down. So that's what the -D is for, is just to make sure that they're not dependent on that. So now that I've got this, I can hit enter. And it's going to go ahead and pull Pi-Hole. It's going to go ahead and pull stubby. It's going to go ahead and deploy all of those things. And then once this is done, we'll come back and take a look at the setup process. And then once all of this has deployed and is up and running, we'll go ahead and get logged into Pi-Hole and set our recursive DNS to our stubby instance.
A few moments later.
Yeah, see, so that's what I was talking about with names just kind of doing whatever it wants. All right, so let's do this. Container name Pi-Hole, volume, container name. Oh, I didn't add a container name to stubby. I should do that. So we'll do container, container. Wow, if I could, container name stubby Pi-Hole. Sure, why not? That should be fine. And we'll do Control Enter and Control, and then Control X, right? Oops. Clear our screen. Let's try that again. Pi-Hole is okay. So now it's saying, hey, that's fine, except that this file isn't rendering correctly, and that's because sometimes Docker Compose wants to turn these files into folders or vice versa. So what we need to do is actually go over here to this directory. We're going to do like this. And we're going to change, if it's a file, then we're going to change it to a directory. If it's a directory, we're going to change it to a file, right? So we're going to do ls. And right there is our resolve.conf. So we're going to do cd resolve.conf. Okay, so what we want to do, we've established now that this is a folder and not a file. It needs to be a file. So we're going to fix this little issue that we had a moment ago. We're going to go back a directory, and we're going to do rm-rf resolve.conf. And now if we do an ls, that that folder is now gone. So we're going to go ahead and do, we're just going to do touch and then resolve.conf. And then we'll go back to our home directory, and then we'll run docker compose up-d again. Okay, so there we go. A little troubleshooting along the way. That's kind of what happens with self-hosting. Sometimes you just got to do a little troubleshooting as you're deploying this stuff. And I like showing some of this stuff because I know people are going to have these issues. So I like to show a little bit of that troubleshooting and how I handle these things as we go along. And let's go ahead and get our IP address, and then, so my IP address for this is going to be right there. So we're going to copy, we're going to paste. We're going to put on port 8082, and then we're going to say admin. So in our password spot here, I'm going to put in password, right? And then we're going to close this. And so this tells us that Pi-Hole is up and running. We're good to go there. Let's go ahead and go over to, I believe it's settings and then DNS. We're going to uncheck right here where it says we're going to use Google DNSSEC and that sort of thing. We're going to uncheck that. And over here, we're going to put in this IP, or custom 1 IPv4, we're going to come back and we're going to grab the IP address of our stubby instance, which in this case is 11 right there. We're going to copy that and we're going to paste this in like so. And then what we want to do is scroll down and we want to check the box that says use DNSSEC. And then we're going to click save. And now it says the DNS settings have been updated using one DNS server, which again is that stubby container that we just deployed. So now that we've got that set up, what we want to do is actually change the DNS on either our network, like our router or whatever, or for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and change our local DNS on this machine. So let's come over to here. Let's open up our control panel. And let's drag this up to here. And then we're going to go to networking and sharing, and I change adapter settings, and then we're going to find our Ethernet, and we're going to drag this up, and then we're going to go to properties, and then we're going to find Internet Protocol version 4 or TCP/IPv4. We're going to copy that in, or open that up, and we're going to say use the following DNS server, which will be 192.168.0.180, and we're going to click OK, and then we're going to click OK, and then we're going to click close, and then we're going to come back over to here. So then now we're back on our Pi-Hole dashboard, right? We're gonna go to dashboard, and immediately we can see this counting up. That's because my computer is actively doing stuff. I've got another screen down here. It's communicating with all sorts of things. And right here you can see all of the stuff that it's doing. We can see the IP address of the device. In fact, if I open this up, we're looking for this to be 0.177. So if I do IP config, and right there is the IP address of this machine. Okay, so now that we have actually made sure that our Pi-Hole is working, or rather our computer is communicating with our Pi-Hole, what we want to do is make sure that our Pi-Hole is communicating with NextDNS. So what we're going to do, we're going to come back over to our desktop. We're going to come over to here, back over to our NextDNS. We're going to click go. Actually, we're going to go to analytics. And now we can see that we're starting to get some queries here. So let's do test my ad blocker. And we're getting really good scores. Look, I've got another ad blocker in my browser, so that's gonna throw things off a little bit. But if we come back over to here and refresh, there we go. And I've got 166 queries, 74 were blocked. That means 44.5% of our queries were blocked. That's all ad-related DNS queries that are Pi-Hole blocked or that are NextDNS blocked. Now, primarily I like to use NextDNS for the sake of having a DNSSEC, which is just kind of like I mentioned earlier, a way to help make sure that your DNS isn't being rerouted inappropriately. If you want to keep your DNS queries lower with regards to ad blocking and that sort of thing, you can actually go back over to your ad blocker and come over to here, and of course go to your ad lists, and then you can add all of your lists here, and all of the ad blocking and that sort of stuff will happen here, which will reduce the number of queries that's going to go over to NextDNS, because it's going to block those requests from needing to be made outside the network. Again, primarily, I'm using NextDNS for the DNSSEC aspect of things. However, if I wanted to, I could come over to my DNS or my NextDNS and go to, you know, like deny lists, and I can add domains here. I can go into the parental controls and I can add websites or games. Any of these that are listed here, we can block. We can add categories of, you know, adult stuff, gambling, dating, all kinds of stuff in here we can block from here as well. So you can do your ad blocking, your parental control stuff either at NextDNS, or if you want to reduce your number again of the DNS queries going to NextDNS, you can configure all of your block lists and your website blocks and your domain blocks and all of those kinds of things in this case Pi-Hole. So so basically getting Stubby set up to work with Pi-Hole isn't actually too bad. There's just a little bit of troubleshooting that has to be done from time to time to make sure that it's going to work appropriately. Okay, so now let's take a look at how we can get AdGuard set up in Docker using Stubby as kind of our proxy to communicate with NextDNS, again, for some ad blocking if you want to go there, or for, again, what I wanted to use it for, which was the DNSSEC aspect of the security. So let's jump over to my desktop here and take a look at that. Again, we're in the home directory of my Debian 11 container here in Proxmox. Again, you don't have to do this in Proxmox, but that's where I'm going to do it for the sake of simplicity here. So before we create our Docker Compose for AdGuard, we actually want to create the network for our AdGuard setup. So let me make sure I've got this. This will, again, all be linked in the video description. So basically we've got Docker network create, AdGuard local network, it'll be the name of the network. And we've got a subnet listed out of 172.2500/24. So basically now we'll hit enter and it says that it's created that. So let's make sure, again, it actually created the network properly. So we'll do Docker network ls, and right there is AdGuard local network. So that means that our network has been created appropriately, and now we can actually go in and deploy or set up and deploy our Docker Compose file. Now, if we do an ls here, we'll see that we've still got our stubby file from earlier when we set that up earlier in the video, right? So we're not going to go through that. Just know that we've got this file in our home directory. So the next thing that we want to do is actually create a docker compose.yml file. So we're going to do nano docker compose.yml, and then we're going to come over to grab this. We're going to do version 3. Let's do 3.3 on this one. I think that's what it was originally. Oops, and then we're going to paste this in. So here we can see that this Docker Compose is a bit different than the Pi-Hole version, and that's kind of why we're taking a look at both, is because they do the same generic or the same general thing, not generic, but general thing. Just they do it a little bit differently, right? So so at the top again we've got. Let me scroll all the way up to the top. So we've got our version 3.3, our service. We've got a couple of services. The first one is AdGuard. The second one is Stubby. But our first service being AdGuard, we've got a container name of AdGuard. We've got a restart policy of unless stopped. Basically, if your system reboots, container crashes, whatever, it will make every effort it can to automatically bring the container back up with this restart policy. We've got a couple of volumes. We've got one for work and one for our configuration. You don't really need to change this, though you can. If you do, though, don't change the colon or anything after it, basically anywhere in any of these Docker Compose files. Next, we've got our ports of 53 and 67 and 80, and so all of these are needed for different things. Right, so basically 53 is for our DNS stuff, the way that actually makes these Pi-Hole and AdGuard work. You need port 53. Port 80 is how we're going to access our dashboard. Same with 443. Port 3000 will be our setup port. Basically, once this is deployed, we'll go to our IP address and then port 3000 to actually go through the setup process. And the rest of these, I don't have enough interest in going through that or committing it to my memory, if I'm being completely honest. But you can go Google those and find out what they're for, or if you even need them. Next, we've got our image, which is going to be AdGuard and their AdGuard Home latest. Next, we've got a network here. Basically, we're going to put AdGuard and Stubby on the same Docker network so that they can communicate more easily. The name of the network is going to be AdGuard Local Network, and we're going to specify an IP address, which is going to be this 172.25.0.10, and then the other one down here will be 172.0.11. Like I've got highlighted there. So basically, we're just going to want to make note of those for later. Anyway, if we come back over and take a look, our next service here is stubby. Our image is Carterfield's stubby. Our restart policy even less stopped. Oh, I should mention, you can just ignore this. This was in there from something else. All of these Docker Compose files will be available, linked in the description, and they'll be corrected for whatever needs to happen to make these work the best. So, or the best for the situation, I should clarify. So again, we've got stubby. For our next service, our image is Carterfield's stubby. Restart policy even less stopped, again, so that it will automatically try to come back up given the circumstances. We've got our volume for our stubby.yml file. Go ahead and do that. And again, we've got a network, our AdGuard local network, and the IP address for this container on that network. And then below this, we've got a network. We have to declare the network, and we have to say what the name of the network is and whether or not it is an external network. And because we created that network earlier, it is external equals true. If we were creating it here, it would be external equals false. But that's not what we're doing. We already created the network, so external equals true. So we'll hit Control-Enter, or Control-O, and Enter, and Control-X. And there we go, now we're out. So now that we've got our Docker Compose file for AdGuard set up, hopefully correctly, let's just make sure that we're still in the right directory. There we are, so we can do Docker Compose up-D. Again, if you run this command and it's like, I don't recognize this command or whatever, just come over and do Docker-Compose up-D. It's just gonna depend on which version of Docker Compose you have installed on your system. So I have the non-dashed version, and then this -D just makes sure that the containers aren't dependent on whether or not our terminal window is up and running. So if we close that terminal window without the -D, our containers will shut down. So we want to use the -D so that we can safely close our terminal window later. So once we're happy with all of this, we can hit Enter. And it's going to go ahead and pull everything that it needs to pull. Because I already pulled stubby when I did the Pi-Hole version, it's not going to pull that. It's already done that. And then it's going to go ahead and hopefully do the right thing there, and it looks like it did. So let's do 192.168.0.180 and then port 3000. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and set up AdGuard Home here real quick. And basically, it's going to listen on all interfaces. Our dashboard will be on port 80 there. Our DNS service will be all interfaces on port 53. And we'll click Next. We'll create a username and password. And then, again, we'll click Next. And then it's like, hey, here's how to do this stuff, how to set up your PC or your router or whatever to make AdGuard Home be your DNS resolver, right? So we're going to skip that. We're going to click Next, and we're going to open our dashboard. We're going to get logged in. Cool. So what we want to do is go to Settings and then DNS Settings here. And right here, our Upstream DNS server is currently quad 9. We're going to delete that. And then we're going to come over to our Proxmox instance here, and we're going to do nano docker compose.yml, and then we want to grab this IP address right here, this 0.11, like so. And like it says here, this will be your AdGuard Upstream DNS server, and there's where to find it. But we're already there, right? So we're going to go ahead and paste that in, and then we're going to scroll down and make sure that everything else here looks good. It should be fine. We want to go ahead and enable DNSSEC right there, and then click Save. Configuration successfully saved. Let's test our upstream servers. Cool, they're working correctly. That means we're good to go here. And then if we come back over, because we were doing some testing earlier, let's see what our number is here. So 278. That's the number that we're starting with. That's going to be our baseline here. So what I want to do is come back over to my network connections, find my Ethernet, and then again drag this up because it always goes to the wrong screen. And then find IPv4 right there, and we're going to put in 192.168.0.180. That is correct, and we'll click OK, and then we'll click OK. And then, so let's do test my ad blocker. We're going to go here, and this is going to immediately shoot to 99% because I've got this. If I turn this off and refresh the page, it's at 4054. It's going up. It's going up. It's going up. This is good. Not too bad. That's with a base configuration. That's not adding any lists in AdGuard or in NextDNS. This is just a standard setup with no modifications whatsoever, and we're still blocking 85% of what's available on this ad block testing website. So that tells us that everything is working. Again, our number over here on NextDNS was 278 queries. Let's refresh that screen. Let's give it a second. Sometimes sometimes these numbers do take a minute to update, so you might have to give it just a moment. And if after waiting a couple of minutes, you notice that this number hasn't changed, what you might want to do is come back over to your AdGuard Home settings and realize that it didn't actually save the Upstream DNS servers. So let's go ahead and fix that and try again. So let's grab this 172 address right there and click copy, and then come back over to here and paste that in there. And then click apply. I didn't save that last time. That was my fault, and test Upstream servers. That's looking correct now. Let's test my ad blocker again. And then let's refresh. There we go. So that's, again, part of the process of sometimes you got to troubleshoot. Sometimes you'll enter something and you won't hit save or you won't hit apply, and you'll think it applied, but it didn't, because that was a different part of the page where the apply didn't matter at the bottom to the top. Sometimes you just miss stuff, and you gotta go back and double check your work, and that's what happened here. And I'm just gonna leave all of this in, because I want you guys to know that I still make mistakes. I still have to troubleshoot this stuff as I'm going through these setup processes. But basically, again, all of this will be linked in the description with all of the Docker Compose and the stubby files and all of that sort of stuff. All of that will be linked in the description down below, so that you can go check that out for yourself and pick the system that you want to deploy on your network. Also, be sure again to check out the sponsor of this video if you're interested in adding a little bit more security to your physical realm versus just your online realm like we've done here. And again, if you want to try out the next DNS solution that I've deployed here, you can also check out the link in the video description, where you'll find an affiliate link where I'll get a little bit of a kickback if you purchase something. But I think with all of that said, I do want to wrap this up. This has been kind of a long video. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for that. But again, with all of that said, I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you guys again for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.